the stuff I had. Like you guys saw the RoboCop stuff. I had the helmet. I had a little arm of his that would like shoot stuff. Nowhere in my brain was I like, oh, this is the part where he like totally stabbed that guy to death and it like squirt. No, I was just like, I'm RoboCop, you know. But that stuff was everywhere. And we can talk about that if you like. But again, as always, I am mostly curious what you guys might have noticed, what you might have took. Again, just like it was last time, I compared it to a shotgun blast. Like it's a lot, pretty quick. But just anything at all that you took away from that.
I know the new Ralph Lauren did like.
Who?
Ralph Lauren.
Yeah.
I don't know if he had anything to do with the movie, like as far as like costumes or whatnot.
I don't remember that part off the top of my head, although I wasn't looking the whole time. I was taking a bunch of notes. Do you remember what part?
Now, like he was just like back in the back, so like you didn't know who he was, you wouldn't know like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all I know to say to that is there's a lot of money. Like one of the big differences between the 70s and especially the height of the 80s. So not really. Eras are weird. Like when you talk about 70s film, a lot of the time, early 80s people will include in that. Same thing here. They're talking about 80s movies, but like early 90s they'll kind of include in that because it's not like we just get to 1990 and we're like, all right, we're done with all that. We're gonna like so it kind of bleeds over, has to change. But a huge marker of 80s action movies, especially, just pumping a bunch of money into them, trying to get a bunch of money out of them because you want to recoup what you invested. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if on a lot of films it went from, well, you know, this guy needs to have a suit, whatever, to like, this guy needs a designer suit. He needs to, like, and that, now you apply that to the whole film. Like, it just gets super different. Absolutely. Cool. What else do you guys notice? Yes, sir.
Seems like there's more of an emphasis on, technology and sci-fi.
Yeah. Can you, any specific example?
Well, I mean, it starts off with RoboCop.
Yeah.
It's half man, half cop. The
Yeah.
Predator about aliens.
I'm still so torn. Die Hard is awesome, and I'm gonna really enjoy talking about it with you guys. It was 50-50 between that and Predator. Predator's really good.
Yeah.
Like really good. I still don't know. Like even now, like the class is the class. We're gonna watch Star Wars. Like I'm like, man, we could just watch Predator. It's a really good movie. But to your point, the sci-fi stuff. They talked about those. Talked about Alien. Total Recall is batshit crazy. I would never teach that movie. I barely understand it. I'm being real with you. Like I could probably figure, but like we could not talk about it as a class. RoboCop is kind of crazy. The same guy made Total Recall, and they're like, you can basically do what you want.
Is Blade Runner from the 80s as well? Or is that
Blade Runner's 80s. That's made by the guy that made Alien, Ridley Scott. And it's weird it's not in here, now that you mention it. I think it's considered more there's not actually a lot of action in that movie.
Yeah.
It's like a detective sort of, real quick, I just want to say one thing that crazy guy said about Total Recall. He had some great quotations. Shit, where did we go? Hold on, I've lost my notes. He says you don't know if the guy's dreaming or not. He said two realities next to each other. You never know what's real or not.
Yeah, like
That's his whole concept for the movie.
Yeah, like the character or the audience, neither knows.
I know.
Yeah.
What a bananas way to make a movie,
Yeah.
right? The whole time you're like, wait, so we're not gonna find out. Like the movie ends, you're like, whoa, fuck. Pretty accurate description of the movie, by the way. And he says that's the point. Now we're not gonna spend a lot of time talking about that because Die Hard, you pretty much know what happens. But it is interesting. In this era, you have like this almost invasion of technological concerns, right? And I think one thing that brings with it, outside of like bigger budgets, because that stuff costs money, is also this question about reality. Even in RoboCop, one of the lines you get from one of those scenes is like, "Oh man, this guy is awesome." I'm paraphrasing. She goes, this other character says, "Oh, he's not a guy, he's a machine," right? Like, you don't know how human he is.
Yeah, like what's the line that separates the two?
Exactly. And if that's true, at least enough in the 80s for those people to like be questioning it, well then, again, you can apply that logic sort of across the board. And I don't want it to become like a history lesson per se, but you do have what many people would argue is like the height of the Cold War, and with that comes a lot of technology that originally was purposed for the military but slowly leaks out into the public, becomes part of everyday life. You have this influx of just insane technologies, and people are having to come to grips with that. They do it via the stories they tell themselves. Like, that's how I keep talking to you guys about these movies. But it's weird to think about as a, like, again, because we take our phones for granted, right? There was a time and place when this stuff first came out. I remember it. It was crazy. Like, I can do what with this, right? And anytime you have a moment like that as a culture, it shakes things up. People question things. People aren't sure. Like, well, if we can do this, what else can we do? What other things maybe we took for granted, they're not as certain as we thought, right? And I think that has a lot to do with the influx of sci-fi, the influx of bananas movies that Verhoeven makes. And because people want to go see them. It's not just the crazy people who are making them. People go and check them out. You had your hand up, sir. And then I think, Mel, were you? I was not. I was doing no such thing. Go ahead, man.
One thing that stuck out to me was they made that comment about how the RoboCop director grew up in World War II.
Yeah.
And he saw real violence.
Real violence.
So did this I kind of had a question of was he? I've never seen RoboCop, but was the dude trying to make just a silly cyberpunk movie, and then since he saw real violence, he was like, let's just add a bunch of.
Verhoeven I like that they focus on him a lot because I don't think he gets enough play these days. But I also, again, would purposefully never teach one of his movies because he's one of those guys. The reason he's so good is when you see a movie of his, you're like, oh, this is that guy. Like, he's so singular. So in a way, a lot of the things he's worried about still apply to how we're thinking about 80s movies. But in another way, it's like, no, that's just that guy. Like, he's... but to answer your question, you think about the age he was when those movies came out. Like, he was maybe 40 or something. So a lot of people around his age lived through World War II, right? Mm-hmm. Now, he's European, so he acted like he was in it. Like, in America, we just man, there's some crazy... But the point is, the people who are sort of coming of age in the 70s, the 80s, they lived through things like World War II or Korea. We fought there. I don't know if you knew that. Vietnam was going on. So people, by and large, are probably, I want to say more affiliated. That's not more aware of what violence can really be, maybe. I like to think we as a society, at least compared to those folks, we have a little more distance between us and real violence like that. So that's my way of saying, yeah, that one actor guy who I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. The guy who kept saying he wanted to play bad guys in all these movies. He had a lot to say about RoboCop, which was interesting. And he says it's Verhoeven trying to make it into a joke somehow. And that's possible. If that's true, because at one point too, he said something about, let me get it right. This is where we are, he says. Again, he means the way we're talking, as a people, oh, this is where we are. That we can, or maybe we should make a joke out of this kind of violence. And it's well, when you're joking about something, you're ridiculing something. What is he ridiculing? All I can come back to is in a lot of ways, a movie like RoboCop is a commentary on other movies from the genre. And again, I go back to last time, or even this time with Rambo 3. Rambo 3 is a throwback when it comes out, kind of. It's somebody tried to make a 70s movie in the 80s. So you have the same character, obviously, that was in the 70s movie Rambo, but everything else about it is just so over the top. I don't know if you remember last time, Rambo 2, he blows up the guy with an arrow that's a guy, and parts of him go. Now it's
he blows up a helicopter.
Fucking helicopter.
Yeah, how does that even work?
I mean, maybe
I
don't
shot the rocket from the boat. That doesn't work.
It doesn't. But it's not supposed. It's so beyond making sense, right? It's just sure, Rambo does that. So you have movies like that, And then you got like a guy like Verhoeven who's like, okay, well, if we're gonna say that movies like that make sense, well then I'm gonna take it so beyond what's even conceivable, right? So you have that RoboCop, and you have Total Recall. And again, so now we're questioning reality again, but it's because of what we've allowed ourselves to believe is possible. Does that make sense? Like, it's almost like movies like that are kind of looking back at the audience and saying, this is kind of what you asked for. Like, you told us you like shit like this, so we're just gonna see how much you can take, kind of, is one way to think about it. What time is it, by the way? I have no way to tell.
It's 4:28.
Okay, sweet. Other things you guys know. You guys are so good at this.
To add on to that, in RoboCop,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was RoboCop.
Yeah.
It was like right after they were talking about somebody ran over somebody. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, the
And,
misshapen.
it like straight up looked like somebody just threw a bucket of like,
He explodes.
water on his windshield or something. That's
Mhm.
RoboCop.
I thought that
Yeah,
was
yeah,
the scene
RoboCop.
taken from The Toxic Avenger when I saw
It feels like that, or it feels, well, especially because of how misshapen the guy is, or it
Yeah.
feels almost, you said steampunk, I think. That's not far. It feels also like
Cyberpunk.
cyberpunk, sorry. I mean, those are they're the same root. Anyway,
Yeah.
it felt a little bit like a subgenre in anime, hyperviolence, which again, I mean, they're doing it for their own reasons, but again, it's this idea, it's so over the top. Like, it's ridiculous. It's like purposefully insane. And again, if that's true, which I think especially in that scene, like, that's fucking ridiculous. It's like, what are they ridiculing? What might they want the audience to think about when this guy liquefies, when he gets run over, right? Do they want you to be horrified? Well, maybe a little, but do they want you to think to yourself, that's not what happened. What are we watching? Like, what is going, like, do they want you to question something?
I think they wanted us to laugh
Maybe.
because like he hits the guy and it splatters and the guy just goes
And it's
shit.
And it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I guess maybe part of it might be admitting to ourselves as a viewing public that we some of the things we ingest in movies are maybe not as, they're not always meant to be taken seriously. They're not as, because I'll tell you this, he doesn't do it for entertainment value, right? Like, it's not like that.
Well, I think it's meant to downplay like the darkness of the whole movie.
Yeah. Well, even the other, damn, what's his name? Is it Ronnie Parker, maybe. That feels right. But the guy who kept talking about RoboCop said that originally it was even more, which is crazy to me, because again, I can picture certain parts of the movie. Apparently it was way more than that, and the censors like kept taking it back until it was just enough to be really messed up. And his point was like, well, when you do that, now it's just violence. Like, now it's just disturbing.
You keep all the worst parts.
Yeah. And again, it's this question of, like, what are we after when we make a movie? Or again, any art, music, book, anything, right? Anything that you enjoy. Sometimes you can watch a movie just to watch a movie and kind of turn off. We all do that, you know? But other times, you want there to be something else kind of going on under the surface. You want to maybe think about it afterwards. And it seems like when they did that to the violence, they took some of that off the table. Was this Ronnie guy's problem with it? There was a bunch of movies. We skipped Tango and Cash because, again, I didn't want 2.5 minutes of just like, look, here's a movie with no substance, which is basically what they say. Oh man, there was a couple they mentioned, and I'm not going to be. Oh, toward the very end, they say studios have to make money. You got to get the date crowd. You need women and children. Like, all of a sudden, it becomes less about maybe what a director envisions, because the director is basically the author of a movie, right? Just like the author of a book, and more about, well, what's going to sell. And again, crazy violence, wildly over the top violence doesn't necessarily sell, at least not to women and children. So now you have to, it's, we had this conversation the very first day, I think. In the 80s is really when the conversation starts around how we're going to sell these things, and that starts to affect the actual product, like the story even, at times, which is interesting. What time is it now? I know I keep asking.
133.
Okay, sweet. We'll do a couple more minutes, and I'll let you guys go a little early. But Good. Other things you guys noticed? Might go to my notes as well.
I already knew this. It's not something
Okay.
I noticed from the documentary, but Hans Gruber and Severus Snape
Yeah.
are the same actor.
The bad guy in the movie we're about to watch, if you've never seen it, is in fact Snape from Harry Potter. He's awesome. He's awesome in this movie. All right, that's cool. Other things you guys noticed? Yeah, sure.
Seems like there is more of a transition from women being a damsel in distress.
That's exactly what I was just looking at. Yeah. Another movie I so badly wanted to teach was Alien. I think it's 79. If you haven't seen it, really good movie. But my favorite part about them talking about it is when they say Ripley, who's Sigourney Weaver's character, was originally a man. And at some point they were like, I think this works better as a woman. And they changed no dialogue. They changed nothing. Like, they just took what was written as a male character and just said, woman could do that. Whatever. And
I think that's part of the reason it works so well.
oh, she crushes it, yeah.
Like if you try to write a female character as like this tough female, like it doesn't feel right. But if you write it as if they are no different, as if a man and a woman are no different,
Yeah.
it seems like.
Well, and the wild thing is, when that movie came out, again in 1979, it's late 70s, I think it's 79, it's a little transgressive to do that, you know? Especially in the late 70s to do exactly what you're describing. And also that's part of why the movie is so notable. Not just because it's an awesome movie, because it is, but it's almost like movies like that work on our own stereotypical expectations. Like, you can be the most progressive dude. Again, I'm a pretty progressive guy, but you still got that shit kicking around in your head. I grew up how I grew up. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't do as much about that, and it works on some of that. It takes advantage maybe of some of those expectations that we have about what a woman either can do or should do, how they should be on screen. Same thing with Long Kiss Goodnight, which is actually a really good movie with Gina Davis. That guy Shane Black who wrote Lethal Weapon, awesome movie too. Talking about how people were like, you can't have a woman, it's not going to sell. And then at the end he's like, they were right, nobody wanted to see it.
Well, it wasn't sold then.
Yeah.
It's ahead of its time, basically.
Sure, in some ways for sure. But again, it's that sort of admission about why are people making these movies. You have guys like Shane Black, Verhoeven, some of those other people who are like, well, we make them because we have a vision, we want to tell a story. And usually when you get people like that, again, books you like or TV shows or movies, anything where you have one or two people who just have a vision, usually that's an artistic vision, so there's a little bit of something else going on too, right? It's not just entertainment. But in this era, you have other people coming in who are like, well, we pay your bills, so we're gonna do some work on this too. And they kept telling him, like, yeah, it's not gonna make money back. You can't do that. And it turns out they were kind of right, you know. So the audience, all of a sudden, artists aren't always creating the art. Now the audience gets to kind of dictate some of the terms. That is a very new thing in the 80s. Like, it basically starts in the 80s. And we still live in that era today, by the way.
And it ruins cinema for the rest of its time.
It can. I mean, it's good and bad. This might be a good place to end. It's almost time, right, Shirley?
Yeah,
Okay, I saw you guys getting pretty, like, checking this on. We'll kind of end on this. We're going to talk about 80s. We're going to stay in the 80s, right? We're looking at Die Hard next time. There's a lot of really cool stuff. I'm super excited. Because some of you still haven't seen it, right? Like, I know you never seen Die Hard. Oh, man. Okay. It's pretty good. All right, I won't spoil it. I was going to say something. I'm not going to spoil anything. But to look forward a little bit, but all the way back to the very first day we were in here, we talked about the Avengers movies, right? That's the best example I can give you because it's super recent. They were huge. They made like 30 of them, and that's not hyperbole. Like, there's like 20 or 30 of those movies, right? Some of those are really good. A lot of them even, are really good. I don't know that we needed all of them. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't feel like we could have lost like 5 of them and been fine. Like, you're not but you gotta have one a year. You gotta have like different ones for different kinds of people. There's all these franchising opportunities. There's all these, like, it starts to, like, what is motivating the creation of this art? Sometimes it's art. Other times, it's other things. And that does, and again, it's good and bad. So it gives us the Avengers. And I think across the board, generally, we would agree, it's pretty good.
Should've just read the comic books.
Do what?
Movies suck. Just read the comic books.
But there's
The
like
movies suck.
there's like a billion of the comic books. Like,
Yeah.
they all have like different
I mean,
universes.
some
and
of the
plot
movies are
lines.
really good. But some are less good. And again, like that's kind of where we're at now. Is I think we're still dealing with the pros and cons of a market-driven artistic economy. That's not like no one was looking over Leonardo da Vinci's shoulder and being like, "She should smile more." You know, like, so anyway, I know, right? I was proud of myself for that. Anyway, for next time, my notes are all over the place. Hang on, I want to make sure. Hell, sorry. That's good enough. Yeah, for next time, watch Die Hard. You got to see it. I hope at this point, we talked a lot about Rocky. We focused on certain elements. You know, like we did a lot of practice. My advice would be, especially if you've never seen Die Hard, I would watch it. Just watch it. But then after that, if you have time, I'm not saying immediately after that, maybe the next day, if you have a little more time, sit down, watch a scene or two. Like if anything stands out in your memory, like, oh, that was interesting, or oh, like the way we talked about Rocky, like kind of has me thinking about how this was shot, or about what this one guy said, like anything like that. If it strikes you, write it down. Potentially go watch a scene or two again, right? Like take some notes. Ideally, I would like you guys to come in with some thoughts now, right? Of course, I have scenes I want us to look at, but I've seen the movie at least a million times, so I can talk about it pretty easily cold. So if you come in and you have thoughts, we will entertain those to begin with. We'll also talk about the second paper, so I would look at the prompt. That's all I got. I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Thank you.